The WarHammer Titan is a final Titan just too overpowered. So what's up guys, Foxen here. Today let's go ahead and get into a deep discussion around the WarHammer Titan. I'm gonna be getting into everything including my theories on it. So let's get into it. The WarHammer Titan just officially debuted in chapter 101 of Attack on Titan. And so far looking at it, it seems like the only unique thing about it really is the headpiece. There has been some discussion about whether the mask is some type of armor. I kinda doubt it. Although I do think it could offer some very limited protection, maybe from Titan flies. And just looking at the mask itself, that seems to be a pinpoint about whether you're a fan of it or not. I've seen some people say that it looks either too bland, while others say that it looks creepy. Personally, I think I'm somewhere in between. I mean, if you look at it without the color, it does look a little weird. But I have seen some colored versions of it. In those, you can see the red underneath. Now that is something that looks like something out of a horror movie. But what do you think? Creepy or not? Now let's take a step back. Let's look at the mask and the whole body. When I first saw this thing, it reminded me of two things from Bleach. One of those was the rank, I think 11 Espada, and the other was Aizen in that cocoon-like form. I just pictured this thing being mostly white all around. I think that's why. The actual body structure looks very similar to that of Eren's Attack Titan, although perhaps not as buff. And really, I have seen a lot of people complain about this. Most of the complaints being around this thing looking way too human. Of course, it is hard to tell or just get a good feeling about this without any color. It does seem like the WarHammer Titan might have this thin layer of armor combined with the mask piece. Just think similar to the Armored Titan, although definitely not as strong. And then the other thing you should notice about this is the mask combined with the body plus the stances you see in the current chapter. I did forget to mention it the first time around, but when I saw it, it did give me this feeling of it being some type of executioner. And that feeling just got doubled down when it said the words, "Do you have any final words?" I'm pretty sure Isayama was thinking back to one of those medieval type of executioners. I don't know, did anyone else get the executioner feel? Next up, let's talk about the power of the WarHammer Titan. Going back to the original question, is this thing way too overpowered? So far it seems like this thing should be called the Alchemist Titan. Because forget about hammers, this thing could really just make anything. So far we've seen three things. You saw that super drill at the beginning of the fight. It was that giant drill that pierced and sent Eren flying. Just keep in mind this was while it was getting his ass beat, and perhaps it wasn't fully transformed yet. Then you got the super long hammer. This is what everyone was waiting to see. And by the way, thanks a lot if you told me this thing looks like the WarHammer Titan playing polo. I totally can unsee that now. And then finally the spikes on the ground. I do question how useful these things are. I saw some people trying to argue that these spikes were the reason that Eren lost. I'm not so sure about that. So overall, the power seems to just be able to make stuff at will. I would imagine there has to be some type of limitation, but I'll get back to this. Originally, I thought all of this stuff was coming from the body of the WarHammer Titan. Some people were thinking, oh, this stuff has to be coming from the skin. But when I was seeing this, it didn't really look like that to me. Instead, I thought crystal. I mean, once again, it is hard to tell because the manga is in black and white. But it could be similar to Eren and Annie's Titan. The WarHammer Titan could just have a better grasp at summoning this stuff. The real power here is bending the crystal into useful weapons or structures. And not to mention, just doing it very quickly. I mean, just think back to when Eren did it back in the Uprising arc in that cave. It seems like that, just a more controlled version. As an alternative, think about this. Another option could be that this stuff is made from the ground or even wood. What do you think about that? This Warhammer could be an environmentally friendly Titan. Also, it is worth noting just how strong is this stuff from the WarHammer Titan. Think back to the giant spike that penetrated Eren. Eren's Titan is supposed to be strong, but still, it didn't seem like it was that hard to break it. I would imagine that the hammers and spikes on the ground have a similar durability. And then we have the second thing that makes this thing overpowered, that super quick regeneration. At the very beginning, it had like half its head destroyed. Keep in mind that this was Eren beating the crap out of it after his hands got super hard. In that other scene where the spikes were penetrating Eren, the WarHammer arm is just gone. It almost looks like a burn victim. That's how bad it was beat up. Still, there is a question about whether this was an ability of it, or perhaps it was just due to it being mid-transformation. I mean, that's possible. We haven't really seen a Titan attack mid-transformation yet. Oh yeah, and complete side note, Eren sucker punching that thing really reminded me of him punching Annie's Titan in season 1, right into that church. Alright, so those two key things are why this thing seems very overpowered. But how about some weaknesses, or potential weaknesses? Let me go ahead and start with the obvious one. The one controlling the WarHammer Titan right now is Willy's sister. This means there is a questionable amount of limited combat experience she does have. I could really only imagine there's some type of training that each WarHammer holder has to go through, so it's not like she's totally without experience. However, it's not like she's fighting in the front lines in constant combat. Just compare her to someone like Reiner or Zeke, or even Eren at this point. Let me also take a moment to mention the other side theory I had. The Tiber family has been around a long time. Arguably, they know the most about Titans and everything else revolving around Titans. So I give you this question to think about. How much does the previous WarHammer Titan come into play for combat experience? You know about how there's some level of memories being shared. The Tiber family should know how to access this to the fullest. Just imagine if the WarHammer Titan holder was able to tap into the battle experience of all the previous holders. Now that would be overpowered. But who knows? What do you think? It is something interesting to think about. Anyway, as for an actual weakness, let me bring up this popular theory right now, that the WarHammer Titan cannot move in battle. The popular idea right now is that the WarHammer Titan's power comes from it being planted into the ground. In other words, it can create a bunch of stuff from the earth, but the trade-off is not being able to move at all. I think this would help to explain that super long hammer. I was also thinking that the spikes on the ground could actually be the roots of the WarHammer Titan. So I was thinking about this and then looking back at the manga. This could be true, but I got my doubts. Looking back at the battle scene, I totally admit that it's not super clear to see what's going on. But you can see the WarHammer Titan has been moving around throughout the battle. You could go ahead and look for yourself. To make it easier, just use a giant spike in the ground for reference. However, I do think that the WarHammer Titan has to be touching the ground for this to work. And that's really just because I think there has to be some type of limitation. Otherwise, that would be way too overpowered. There is also a possibility that to compensate for the ability, the WarHammer Titan itself is not too fast, and the actual body it has could be very fragile. Having a weak body would help explain that super quick regeneration. Anyway, for a moment let's assume that the WarHammer Titan does need to be planted on the ground. Also, I don't think it's crazy that it survived that explosion to the neck. On top of that, Jaws and Peak are coming any second. With that in mind, how do you beat this thing? Assuming Eren could get his Titan back up again, he could use Attack Titan strengths to throw this into the air. I mean, he was able to lift that boulder in the past before, so this shouldn't be hard at all. And then while it's mid-air, the scouts could nuke it while it's flying. An alternative could be to release their God of Destruction. You already saw how the Colossal Titan sent Eren flying with a kick. So just imagine Armin super kicking it or picking it up. The issue here would be how slow the Colossal Titan is. That's why a third possible option could just be Armin body slamming the damn thing. And almost forgot, the final option. There is always Levi coming out and then turning this thing into complete barbecue. But I think Levi might be waiting for the Beast Titan round 2. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a step back. The WarHammer Titan is the long-awaited final Titan shifter, the 9th one. I'll ask you, do you think this is really the final one? We were told a long time ago that there were 9 total, but do you think they'll go the Naruto route? In other words, could there be a super powerful 10th one? Perhaps when all powers combine into one, that's what you get. But that's just really throwing something fun out there. What I really want to get to is this, about how the WarHammer Titan could be the missing link to a mystery. You know about how the walls were supposedly created by millions and millions of colossal titans. Do you really think this was done using only the power of the founding titan? The recent chapter revealed about how the king and Tiber family once worked together. When I first saw the alchemist abilities of the WarHammer, I had this idea. What if the WarHammer Titan also helped to build the walls? You got the founding titan using his power to control the colossal titans. The colossal titans then harden. The problem is now that you're left with this massively uneven wall. This is where the WarHammer Titan could come in. The WarHammer Titan could have helped build the almost perfect top layer of the walls. This way, realistically the walls could have been built in a short time. Otherwise, the king would have had to use every Eldian to focus on layering the walls for decades and decades. I know it's not completely the same, but let's look back at the Great Wall of China as a comparison. The total perimeter of Wall Maria is about 3,000 kilometers. The last piece of the Great Wall was about 6,000 kilometers. That took about 200 years to build. If you take half of that, you got 100 years. And sure, in Attack on Titan you don't actually have to build the walls, just layer them. In this case, that also involves 2 other walls, Wall Rose and Wall Sina. I don't think it would have taken 100 years, but it still would have taken several decades to do so. So far in canon, there's been really almost no evidence of people actively working on the walls. they just kind of appeared one day. So this highly supports the idea that the WarHammer Titan played a huge role in building the Eldian cage on Paradise Island. But hey, that's just an Attack on Titan theory. Anyway, more important is what you think. Do you think the WarHammer Titan is too overpowered? What do you think could be his weakness? And what do you think about my theory about how the WarHammer Titan helped to build their cage? By the way, definitely give a colossal thumbs up and subscribe. A lot more Attack on Titan videos are coming. Right now I'm trying pretty hard to get a weekly schedule going on. Plus, Attack on Titan videos isn't the only stuff coming. By the way, do check out my top anime for 2017. Go ahead and find out if there's anything you missed. And I'll see you guys later.